is in effect due to an appeals court decision. The healthcare mandate is blocked in half the states. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
This comes as the Omicron variant is reported in all 50 states. Meantime, the FDA has granted emergency use authorization for the COVID pill Paxlovid that Americans with the virus can take at home to head off the worst effects.
Studies show the drug reduces hospitalization and death in high-risk patients by 89%. The federal government has agreed to purchase enough of Pfizer's drug to treat 10 million people. But a complicated 6 to 8 month manufacturing process means initial supplies will be limited during the current surge.
Fox's Jonathan Seary. And the battle goes on to get President Biden's Build Back Better bill passed after Democratic Senator Joe Manchin said he could not support it. Republican Congressman Kevin Brady tells Fox News,
this bill is as alive or as dead as Senator Manchin makes it. And so the question is, can they begin to accept that he's got parameters that they'll have to meet?
And stocks rose for a second day on strong economic reports. The Dow gained 261 points. America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
The White House says it's giving Americans with student loans another helping hand.
A moratorium on federal student loan payments will stay in place through May 1st, a 90-day extension for millions of student loan borrowers still coping from the impact of the pandemic, President Biden announced. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki adds,
So this pause gives the administration time to manage the ongoing pandemic and further strengthen our economic recovery.
The Trump administration initially suspended federal loan payments as the pandemic set in March 2020 and extended that freeze through January of this year. This is the second time the moratorium has been extended by the Biden administration. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon was carjacked at gunpoint Wednesday in South Philadelphia. Scanlon was confronted by two men as she returned to her car from an event. Her office says the Congresswoman was not physically hurt. We now know who the All-Stars are for the NFL's Pro Bowl.
The Indianapolis Colts leading the way with 7 Pro Bowl selections as announced by the NFL on Wednesday. The Kansas City Chiefs and LA Chargers right behind with 6, including Chargers receiver Keenan Allen.
Consistency and availability. So I've been saying it. Being there for the team, being able to make plays when it's time to make plays, and staying consistent.
The Bolts also have one of the 4 rookies voted into the Pro Bowl in tackle Rashawn Slater. Those 4 rookies among the 31 first-time selections out of the 88 NFL All-Stars announced on Wednesday, with Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady selected to his record 15th Pro Bowl, kicking off February 6th. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And a federal appeals court upholds a ban on cockfighting in U.S. territories. The ruling Wednesday rejecting a Guam businessman's 2019 lawsuit, arguing the ban is unconstitutional. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm not going to be able to be sitting in front of this microphone and saying that tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that. But please, please remember, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'll be back on Monday to start reminding everyone, including our government. All right, Second Amendment, the United States Constitution, followed by Zemi Ikotni. Here's the Daily News. Our View, General Fund War Claims Compensation Plan raises questions. Well, you're being polite there, Daily News. Actually, it raises answers, not questions. The atrocities suffered by the people of Guam during World War II are incomprehensible to most people living here today. Families separated, land confiscated. Poor choice of words. Forced labor, forced marches, hunger, sickness, physical and sexual abuse, torture, and executions. The federal government has fallen short in its responsibility to compensate those who were here during the war, and the governor's office is trying to make up for those shortcomings with Bill 230, which would extend war claims to people who missed federal deadlines, as well as descendants of those who died before the federal war claims program was enacted. Unfortunately, the funding source for Bill 230 is the general fund, which, as Senator Joanne Brown noted during a hearing on the bill Tuesday, is money that would come to our people for other things, be it to run our educational systems or police department or other social services that we provide in this government to our people. Well, it's appropriate to compensate war survivors as quickly as possible. The plan to compensate descendants of those who did not get a chance to file claims is problematic. If the bill passed, it would allow people who were eligible for compensation under the Guam World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, but who did not receive compensation from that program to apply for, because they'd missed the deadline for filing, to apply for payments of $10,000 to $15,000. An unknown number of war survivors missed the deadline for filing claims with the federal government under that act. Now, they are survivors. They are people who were alive on July 21, 1944, and continue to live down until the day that the Loyalty Recognition Act became law. Those are survivors. The bill specifies that payments will be made to those individuals before payments are made to descendants. Speaker Terlahi said lawmakers want to make sure we have enough for these war claims, for sure. And $10 million was just an estimate based on really no way to know how many missed the deadline. We have no way of knowing that, but we'll appropriate the money anyhow. Somebody guessed 700, but that was a guess, she said. I think there may be more than that. We really don't know. There are 700 people, if there are 700 people filing claims between 10 and 15,000, the cost for the payouts alone would be between 7 and 10.5 million. Department of Administration Director Edward Byrne is back. Byrne is gone, I guess. He's not the Department of Administration Director. He is the Director of Administration. Edward Byrne said money is available to cover that expense. The qualifications to file a claim are the same as they were under the federal plan. The part of the bill that deals with descendants is a different matter altogether and wasn't covered in the federal payout, but is being covered in this one for a number of reasons, Byrne said. Reason number one, because the governor wants to be able to campaign on it. Now, I went through the whole sordid story of war claims yesterday. Just a brief reminder, we've been able to get the House to pass some kind of war claims bill, but the Senate was always a sticking point. And during Madeline Berdalio's term as our delegate, she got the bill through the House, and John McCain said, I will get it through the Senate for you. But the only people that we're going to pay out are those who were alive in July, during the Japanese occupation and are still alive. We're not going to pay any heirs or descendants. Madeline really flubbed it by saying, well, thank you, Senator McCain, but I have to go home and check with my constituents. Meaning she had to get out her calculator and figure and do the math, because when it came to the number of people who actually suffered through the Japanese occupation and were still alive at that time, 10 or 12,000 maybe. The heirs of people who had gone through the occupation and were alive at that time, probably 30 or 40,000. Which is better, 30 or 40,000 votes or 10 or 12,000 votes? Well, she screwed around with it so long that McCain said, I'm not going to do it. The hell with you. So the classic calculation of the relative values of a bird in the hand versus two in the bush was brought home to Madeline, who learned the hard way that 50% of something is an awful lot more than 100% of nothing. And who paid the price for it? We all did. Because when the United States government finally passed the Loyalty Recognition Act, Madeline got it through, and she had a really unique funding source. The Loyalty Recognition Act payouts are funded by Section 30 money that is covered over to the Treasury of Guam every year. It's the money that military servicemen and federal employees pay that is remitted to the government of Guam. So we paid for it, in essence, with our own money. Just a really sad story all the way along.
Embarrassing.
It is embarrassing, yeah. So now, of course, there's a lot of chirping from people who weren't alive on the 21st of July, 1944, were born afterwards, but are related to people who were born before that date, people who suffered through the Japanese occupation, either spouses, or children. And Therese Terlahi wanted to pay those people $25,000. She had a floor amendment ready to go at the legislature to add to the bill that would correct an extremely serious error that the legislature made when it passed a bill that had Teresa's floor amendment in it, even though Teresa's floor amendment was never even discussed. But it passed. It was engrossed. The bill was sent to the governor's office. The governor signed it. And then everybody said, oh, shucks, look what we did. So in the process of correcting that bill, Teresa introduced her amendment that was held to be non-germane, didn't make discussion, but snuck it into the bill. Yeah, so...
exactly what happened.
Yeah, so now, when the corrective bill passed, the legislature said to the governor, you got 30 days to come up with a plan to pay the folks that were eligible but that missed the deadline. Instead of that, the governor comes up with this bill to pay those folks plus descendants of those who suffered through the occupation and died. And that's a huge amount of money.
Our plagiarizer in chief.
Exactly.
This is the second time she's done that.
Yes. The plan calls for a payment of $25,000 to be distributed to family members. If there's a surviving spouse and no children, the spouse receives the entire amount. Otherwise, the spouse would receive half. The other half would be divided among the children. If the spouse isn't living, the money would be divided among the children. As Brown noted, World War II was an injustice that was brought upon our people. So to ask our people to be the ones to pay this compensation is not morally right. It's not ethically right. I'm going to add, it's not fiscally right. To do this, to simply tell our people, we're compensating you, but we're taking it off the plate of your children and your grandchildren and all the current services we're providing to the people of Guam, I don't think it's right to ask our people to compensate themselves for atrocity that was brought upon them. She's right. We need to compensate those who are still living and were not yet paid. Any compensation for family members should come from the federal government, which is, a roundabout way of saying it ain't going to happen.
Why would there be an increase in a payment for family members? They got at least $10,000 more than the $15,000.
Yeah.
What is that, a bonus?
I guess. And of course, I keep coming back to what this really amounts to is wealth redistribution. And the money will be given to those who are the children of someone who was alive during the Japanese occupation. And if you're not one of those children, then everybody else is, in effect, cutting a check to you. Now, I can see the wisdom in providing some sort of succor to those who actually lived through the occupation. Like my wife did, she was a little girl, but she lived through it, and her sisters did. One of her sisters died at Meningong. One of her nieces died at Meningong. It was a tough thing. But I can understand that. But if you didn't live through it, then you're no different from anybody else. You're not entitled to anything out of the public treasury, because everybody pays into the public treasury. That's my 2 cents on it. Okay, I notice I'm already attracting some traffic here, even before I get to the. That's Wayne, right? He's a little early. Yeah, before I even get to the Post. So going straight to the Post, suppressing the sound of gunshots does not help keep the public safe. Concern for the general public's safety and common sense prevailed when Governor Lulian Guerrero on Wednesday refused to sign into law legislation a certain majority of senators approved during a session last week to legalize gunshot sound suppressors. This legislation was somehow more important for the senators who voted for it than the legislation that would provide benefits to the vast majority of island residents, such as legislation that reduces government taxes and fees. So, you know, the Post is right, but, you know, when you're writing editorials, you don't need to get into whataboutism. You know, that's not what we expect from you. And then back to the main points of the legislation. One argument for legalizing firearm sound suppressors, or silencers as some call them, was that it would protect the public from noise pollution and gun owners from hearing loss. The governor, in a letter to senators, said she considered the risks and benefits such legislation would bring. Gun owners can simply get better earmuffs or earplugs to minimize the risk of hearing loss, the governor concluded. And for the public in general, keeping the status quo provides more benefits, she added. When the public hears the sound of gunshots, they're alerted to run for safety, according to the governor. I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on this editorial. The way I read it is a good place for both the governor and the Post to show us that they're gun control types, that they don't like guns, and anything that they can do to show their displeasure in guns in general, and I suppose the Second Amendment in particular, is something that they would really groove on. So, Jose, have I got a phone call? No. Okay. I had a phone call, and it's gone. All right, so let's go from there to the card. This is what I've got on the card. I've got Topaznia versus GovGuam. I've got the governor versus Wayne Pacell, and Pacell versus Gods and Arrows. I've got Tall Tales versus Separatists. Therese versus the military. And this is a takeoff on Bavacqua versus USMC. And the left versus the Constitution. Some items that have been on the card for a while. California versus marijuana. Chicago versus Fox. BLM versus hate crimes. So starting out with, once again, Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. I once again take my hat off to Paul for giving us the ideal paradigm with which to deal with the narrative versus the facts. And you'll recall that Paul said, if you're watching on Facebook, you'll see from KFC a pan full of an orange object, and it's rice. And it's clearly orange, and it's clearly white, but we call it red rice. And Paul wrote to the Post on Daily News and said, we shouldn't be calling red rice when it's actually orange. And this brought back a firestorm of criticism of folks out in the community and the Daily News supporting the narrative. Well, we don't want some outsider coming in here and telling us what it is. We've always called it red rice, so just butt out. That's the basic tenor of the comments. So a classic example of the narrative overriding the facts. Next item I have on the card is Topaznia versus GovGuam. And this is a story that ran in the Post. Double pay appeal fails, but class action case still in play. The Supreme Court has affirmed an earlier decision from the lower court denying the double pay lawsuit filed by police officer Steve Topaznia. Tom Fisher, counsel for Topaznia, said he believed the high court's opinion was agenda-driven. The agenda being to protect the government purse at the expense of working men and women, Fisher said. The court tortures a clear Department of Administration rule to arrive at the conclusion it wants rather than that which the rules require. We express gratitude to our frontline workers, but when it's time to put up, we shut up. So I got to wonder, is Tom Fisher laying the foundation for his campaign for the legislature next November? Yeah. When you're a lawyer, you go to court, you win some, you lose some. You hope you win more than what you lose. I read the Supreme Court opinion, and I agree with the Supreme Court opinion. Of course, you'll recall that I was I was not very happy from the get-go when we sent people home and paid them for staying home, and then engaged in this barnyard equity fiction that because some people got to stay home and got paid, people who actually work should get paid double because it's only fair. And the Supreme Court came along and said, well, wait a minute. The predicate was that your agency had to be shut down and you were called into work. Well, nobody called Topaznia into work because his agency wasn't shut down. The police department operated all the way through that so-called emergency. And, you know, we get carried away with our generosity towards government employees. That's what police officers do. You know, a police officer doesn't say, oh, it looks like a typhoon coming. I've got to go home now. That's when we need police officers the most, when things get kind of ragged. One interesting nugget here, the Supreme Court analysis of the rules appears to reach conclusions similar to a May 2020 opinion from Attorney General Levin Camacho that the employee's facility must be closed to benefit from Rule 8.406 in addition to other requirements. But while the Attorney General opined that the criteria are clear, he also stated that its application to a prolonged pandemic could lead to unintended and illogical inequities. Now, I fear the word equity more than I fear the word fire anymore. You know, if I were sitting in a theater and someone in the middle row hollered out, fire, fire, I'd probably get up and leave the theater. But if someone in the middle row of the theater hollered, equity, equity, well, I'd be out of there like a shot. Equity is far more dangerous than fire. And of course, when you add the word in front of it, it becomes even more dangerous. Illogical inequities, and this is the illogical inequity. For example, government healthcare workers would not be eligible for double pay as their facilities would likely be categorized as fully operational and open to the public. Meanwhile, essential employees with duties not directly to COVID-19, such as payroll, could be eligible if their agencies were deemed completely closed and they were called in. Well, when you start out with something as illogical as Rule 8.406, to try to parse it in such a manner as to find some logic in it, you'd need a battery of Philadelphia lawyers in order to do that, and it still wouldn't be possible. So, you know, and again, the purpose of 8.406 was a barnyard equity purpose, and that is if some people stay home and get paid and other people then actually have to go in and do their jobs, they should get paid for doing their jobs, and then they should get stay-home pay too. Therefore, they should get double pay. It's a silly rule, and you'll recall that early on, Mr. Byrne, Edward Byrne, the director of administration, referred to yesterday as Edward Bird, let the cat out of the bag early that the governor wasn't going to pay the double pay. But she kept people stringing along for a long, long time. I expect a lot of people had the money spent by the time they found out they weren't going to get it. And it was one of those, everybody knows that when the GovGuam shuts down for a typhoon, you have to go home and stay home, but you're still going to get paid. And people who work, essential workers, are going to get double pay. Everybody knew that. So for once, the governor did something right. Even I will have to give her credit for that. So that's Topaznia versus GovGuam. Okay, let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Bill's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, next on the card is more Wayne Pacell versus Gods and Arrows. And you'll recall that Wayne Pacell is the director of an outfit called the Animal Wellness Action, AWA. And Animal Wellness Action is greatly or sincerely opposed to cockfighting in any location, in any of its forms, etc. And Wayne has exposed a lot of the things that are going on here in Guam. How many birds are imported, where the birds come from, some of the other interesting aspects of cockfighting here on the island. And he probably is not the most popular guy on the island with respect to a small but very vocal group of cockfighters. As an example, well, let me back up a second here. The latest or the focal point here is that shipping cockfighting birds, roosters, in interstate commerce has been a federal crime since 2002, and a crime throughout most of the United States by 2009. And on the 20th of December, was it last year, it became a crime in all of the territories. This prompted a lot of chest beating on behalf of local cockfighters, separatists. And
it ruffled some feathers.
It ruffled some feathers, yeah. A lot of people were really crowing about it. Yeah, I got one more here that I wanted to spring on you, Jose, but it's not really good, so I don't want to lay an egg. Yeah. So a good example of some of the local, what passes for thought process comes from Senator Jose Pito Terlahi. You'll recall Pito was the senator that defended his son Joey Terlahi at a public hearing when he cross-examined somebody from the court who was unable to answer his questions, causing Jose to sum up by saying, well, the reason that there are no reports of that is because it just never happened, right? Well, that story didn't work out very well because his son was indicted this week. Well, here's his pronouncement on AWA and cockfighting. Senator Jose Terlahi, as you were, the latest act of local defiance on the ban comes ironically from recent amendments strengthening the island's animal cruelty laws, which also officially recognize cockfighting as a cultural practice and prevents the criminalization or punishment of cockfighting. So Cruelty to animals is always bad. It's kind of like Rory and freedom of information. You know, we never discuss personnel matters unless it's somebody we don't like, and then we just open the floodgates. Senator Jose Terlaje proffered that exemption, and in response to this latest release from AWA, criticized the group for failing to recognize the plights of the people of Guam. Quote, the Animal Wellness Foundation says the people of Guam aren't civilized because of cockfighting. I read all of the stuff that AWA put out. I never saw that. I think Jose has a much better memory than mine because he is able to remember things that never happened. It is more uncivilized to deny human beings real representation in the laws that govern them. We have real crimes to deal with, and we should not commit any law enforcement resources to appease an outsider who doesn't even recognize our human rights. So carrying whataboutism to a new extreme here. Of course, Wayne's an outsider, and that's an unforgivable sin as far as the likes of Jose Pito Terlaje are concerned. And if you didn't know what Terlaje's talking about, you wouldn't understand what he's trying to say, because he isn't saying that much, right? So I've got that. And if you were listening to the point before the show started, you would have heard national news that the Ninth Circuit has ruled on a lawsuit arising in Guam, finding that the federal law banning cockfighting in the territories is in fact constitutional. And the caption of the case is Sedfrey Linsongan versus United States of America. Sedfrey represented himself, and it was kind of a lackluster complaint. But the Ninth Circuit came up with a first-class opinion that I'm going to spend a little time on for two reasons. One, the subject matter, and two, it's a good teaching tool for some important points of law. So we'll need our law and order notebooks in a second, Jose. But right now, I've got Wayne Pacell on the line, and Wayne, welcome to Guam.
Good afternoon, Bob. Great to be with you.
So I know you haven't been here. I suspect you're dying to make a visit sometime, right?
Well, no, I have been there actually, and I went. I came to Guam. I flew from D.C. where I live, and I flew to Guam in 2019. Met with a lot of political leaders and others, and I actually went to a cockfight. It was an illegal cockfight at the time, but it became even more illegal, if that's possible. A wider range of prohibited activities took effect December 20th, 2019. So just about 2 years ago, Bob,
right,
was the effective date of the latest amendments to the Animal Welfare Act, the Federal Animal Welfare Act. As you noted in your setup, animal fighting has been criminalized throughout the United States for a long time. The federal government really stepped it up, and I worked on this amendment in 2002 to ban any interstate transport of fighting animals, dog fighting, cockfighting, and then the screws have been tightened on illegal animal fighting since then with 5 upgrades of the federal law in the 21st century, and the 2018 amendments to the Farm Bill made it explicit that cockfighting is banned everywhere in the United States. Organizing a cockfight, creating a cockfighting venue is banned everywhere in the United States. This was not just targeting Guam. This is a United States prohibition on an activity that has interstate activity woven into it.
Understood, Wayne. You know, I spoke yesterday on this, and I'm a Federalist, and the part about this entire exercise here is I don't like the national government creating criminal laws, attempting to regulate behavior in the states, and this bill falls into that category. On the other hand, I don't like anarchy either. So regardless of how it became law, it is the law, and when we don't respect the law, when government officials don't respect one law, it sends a signal to everybody. you really don't have to pay much attention to these laws, because if you don't like it, you really don't have to do it, especially if you can throw the word culture into your dislike.
Listen, we have worked at the state level for many, many years. I led ballot measures in Missouri and Arizona and Oklahoma to ban cockfighting in those states because state lawmakers wouldn't step up and call out a barbaric practice. Eventually, it had to be the people of those states, after petitions were gathered in requisite number and qualified within, a set period of time, and the votes were all overwhelming in favor of banning the activity. And then we worked in New Mexico and Louisiana to outlaw it. As the numbers became so overwhelming, it became embarrassing to the holdout states. But the territories had held on to it, and Guam held on to it. But it was always, Bob, a small number of people. We did a poll on Guam in 2019, a Guam-based pollster that showed of people who had an opinion about the federal government having a ban on cockfighting, 3/4 of Guamanians supported that. So this was not some circumstance, as Terlahi and others have offered, to say, oh, this is some deeply practiced cultural activity and the people of Guam support this. No, most people all over the United States and all over the world have a moral intuition about this, that there's something really problematic about watching animals kill each other in front of you, and in this case, attaching knives or curved ice picks called gaffs to the animal's legs, and then gambling on the outcome. Most people just don't go for it, and I think that has been proved correct in Guam, on Guam, in the poll that we conducted.
Yeah, there's almost a hard wiring inside the human brain that rejects cruelty purposeless cruelty to animals, and that's exactly. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I mean, even before the first animal welfare group was organized in the United States in 1866, the ASPCA, the first anti-cockfighting law preceded the formation of that first group by 20 or 30 years. I mean, people really did have a moral intuition about this. And it held on in a small number of places because there was a loud, vociferous group that intimidated some of the politicians. And I've seen that happen on Guam as well. I can't really believe that most of these politicians who've been speaking up for the cockfighters really believe that cockfighting is okay. They seem to be just cowed by this small group of loud folks. But I think, as you point out, this is now a matter of settled law. I mean, the Congress overwhelmingly passed it, Republicans and Democrats, Republicans of libertarian instincts as well as other stripes politically within the caucus. Democrats all over the spectrum also supported it. This has been, an issue that's been voted on time and time again by the United States Congress. And what happened is Puerto Rico cockfighters and politicians who are aligned with them challenged the federal provisions of the Amendment 2018, and it went before a U.S. District Court judge, a judge who is of Puerto Rican descent in San Juan. He ruled in favor of the United States, saying the U.S. has authority to handle this issue. It went to the First Circuit in Boston. It was a 3-0 panel, and then they appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied the writ certiorari to hear the case. The Guam, Mr. Lingassen, I believe, he challenged that same provision. It went to a U.S. District Court for the District of Guam. That judge, a Guam-based judge, ruled in favor of the United States. It went to the Ninth Circuit, and this morning, the Ninth Circuit said, the United States has the authority here. So they've exhausted all of their legal avenues. The Congress passed it overwhelmingly. The courts have affirmed the constitutionality of the statute. And now we're left with a circumstance where some politicians on Guam, are they going to be defending this kind of lawlessness? There's no ambiguity about it. It's been settled. 4 of 4 courts ruled on this issue precisely on the questions raised by Mr. Lingassen and Puerto Rico cockfighters. So, I've not said that the governor should enforce the law. I've said that the governor should provide some moral leadership here, and she should say whether she agrees with cockfighting or not. This is the law. The law needs to be obeyed. The law needs to be observed. And the same is true for the director of the Department of Agriculture. We've documented 10,000 fighting birds shipped from U.S. states to Guam over the last 4 years. Now we know with the cockfighting schedule that we just obtained for the Dome and Dededo, for fights to begin on New Year's Day and to persist through the end of the month, we know why those birds were shipped. They're shipped for fights. And there's just this notion, well, we don't quite know why the birds were shipped. Well, we investigated the shippers and found that they were not knee-deep in cockfighting. They were neck-deep in cockfighting. There's no ambiguity about any of this.
Wayne, the Ninth Circuit, I have the Ninth Circuit in front of me, and it's pretty nicely a piece of work. It debunks some of the theories that the defenders of cockfighting would rely on, although probably wasn't necessary because it was a pretty easy case for the Ninth Circuit to decide. Changing the pitch here a little bit, it is a federal law. It can be enforced by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and by the United States Attorney. Do you think that there's any possibility that those two organizations are going to pick up the gauntlet and run with it?
Well, we're seeing the United States take more action against cockfighters throughout the United States. They recently brought charges against 7 members of a single family in Alabama, Brent Easterling and his siblings and other relatives, for running 2 cockfighting pits in middle Alabama and selling birds across state lines, selling the cockfighting implements across state lines, traveling to Mexico back and forth for fights. There have been a bunch of other cases. So there was little activity on this subject. There had been a bit of a step up because of our pressure on dogfighting, and now we're seeing more activity on cockfighting. So I really do think the cockfighters on Guam participate in this clearly illegal activity, a felony level offense at their peril. You're correct. It's the FBI that can enforce this law as kind of the police to investigate things and bring the matter to a prosecutor, the United States Attorney, and his or her assistant U.S. attorneys. But there are other federal law enforcement agencies that are involved in this as well. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service has investigators and enforcement people. They've been involved in investigations. Homeland Security investigations has also conducted cockfighting investigations and enforced the federal law. And FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and USPIS all have offices on Guam. The agency that doesn't have an office on Guam that's been quite involved is the United States Department of Agriculture and its Office of Inspector General, which is its law enforcement arm. But there's ample enforcement capacity, and of course, law enforcement officers can travel. I think if a high-profile arrest is made at one of these cockfighting derbies, that will send the signal that it's simply not worth losing your freedom to fight animals and to be, titillated by the bloodletting and to exchange money on gambling. You can gamble on a lot of other things in society. You don't need to do it on staged animal fights.
That's been the message here on Tall Tales, that if you haven't stopped doing it, you better stop now, because it's just a matter of time before somebody gets nailed. You don't want to be the one that gets nailed.
$250,000 fine is the maximum fine, 5 years in prison per violation. If you have 10 violations, you can compound the penalties. It could be millions of dollars in penalties and many, many years in prison. Many of the cockfighters, have cockfighting yards with sometimes hundreds of birds. The big operators in the United States have thousands of fighting animals, and every one of those animals could be a violation. If you have a cockfighting complex, a pit, that's a separate violation. If you have cockfighting implements, those are separate violations. So it's just a very, very strong law. There is no ambiguity about the constitutionality of that law. Very few cockfighters who are arrested, make it out with a jury finding them not guilty. A lot of these folks are just brazen and blatant, and that works against them.
I've hypothesized that the boom might fall when some federal authorities get deeply involved with, say, the Oklahoma cockers, and their investigation leads to some ties in Guam. So there's this huge dragnet thrown out that covers not only Oklahoma, but catches some people in Guam also who wind up getting indicted and prosecuted for dealing with the folks in Oklahoma.
You're right, Bob. Oklahoma, the top 5 shipping states to Guam are Oklahoma's number 1, California 2, Alabama 3, Tennessee 4, and North Carolina 5. And when the federal government arrests a major cockfighter, they seize computers, they seize shipping records, they seize all sorts of things, and that is how the arrests radiate out. And you could very easily see a major cockfighting shipper arrested in California, and that pulls a number of Guamanian cockfighters whom that California-based cockfighter sold birds to into the dragnet. So that's the way things happen. That's the way drug crimes are prosecuted. It's the way animal fighting crimes are prosecuted. So it doesn't have to originate on Guam for Guamanian cockfighters to be pulled into this network. A cockfighting dealer of birds or the fighting implements, keeping records of those people, and then there's supporting information that comes to light during the investigation. Again, why risk 5 or 10 or 15 years in prison to engage in something like this? You've been amply warned. We're not seeking to have anyone go to jail for this. We just want them to stop. Just stop engaging in acts of animal cruelty. Find other ways to entertain yourself. There are a multitude of them. I can give people a list.
Well, Wayne, very good. It's been a very informative phone call. I really thank you for, I guess we've kept you up a little bit late. You're on the West Coast right now, right?
I am. It's not too bad. And I'm so glad to be on the line with you. I've got friends on Guam who say so many good things about you, and I really appreciate your having me on and allowing me to talk about this issue.
Well, keep us informed, Wayne, and if you ever feel an overpowering desire to call Tall Tales again, we'll be very happy to entertain you.
I'm sure I'll take you up on that, Bob.
Okay, Wayne. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, here we go. We're almost at the big halftime show. I didn't want to interrupt Wayne when, He's calling from so far away. But let's see, I got another caller on the line. Dr. Tom Poole. You know, it's about 4 minutes to the halftime show. And Tom is always such a gold mine of information and brevity. So, Tom, I'm going to ask you to hang on until after the big halftime show, and then we'll give you as much time as you'd like to have. In the meantime, I got to do some housekeeping here. I didn't award the coveted Blue Star for editorials, and I'm going to do that now. You'll recall the Post showed its anti-gun self, and the Daily News took issue with this whole idea of paying war claims to folks that did not live through the Japanese occupation. Well-written editorial, very deserving of the coveted Blue Star. Congratulations, Daily News. And better watch out, Post. The Daily News is catching up. The Daily News is up to 76 Blue Stars now.
And there's a great example of one editorial did its due diligence and research, and the other one just snatched whatever emotional thread they could put out there in the editorial.
Exactly.
Void of any fact.
Exactly.
I'm not even a firearm owner, and I know that a suppressor doesn't silence the shot, it doesn't make it quiet, and everything that they put in that editorial is just completely baseless.
It is, and it hypothesizes things that are so remote from reality. You know, I have a 4-inch thick concrete roof in the house that I live in, but I'm going to thicken it to 3 feet, because in the event that a meteor hits my house, that 4-inch roof won't keep it out. I've got to protect myself. So we have to design our lives around the possibility that there may be gunshots, and we want to be able to hear the gunshots so that we can run for cover, right?
They got to stop watching Netflix movies.
Really? Okay, so I'm going to talk about Linsongen versus the United States. Start on that. We'll break for the halftime show. We'll come back to Tom, and then I'll finish up with Linsongen versus the United States. It was a very interesting decision. Summary. Let me go to the beginning here. Siegfried Linsongen appeals pro se, meaning he did the work himself. He didn't have a lawyer. And no disrespect to Siegfried, but lawyers occasionally represent themselves, and the saying within the profession is that the lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client.
He's, as far as I know, 0 for 2 now on representing himself.
Yeah, but I give him high marks for trying, you know. He gives it the old college try. Siegfried Linsongen appeals pro se from the district court's grant of summary judgment in favor of the United States. The facts are known to the parties, so we repeat them only as necessary. Summary judgment was proper in rejecting Linsongen's claim that Section 12616 of the Animal Welfare Act exceeded the constitutional powers of Congress. Okay, let me stop right there, and I'll pick up there after we finish talking with Tom.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A Supreme Court showdown. I'm Carmen Roberts. Fox News. Justices announced they will hold a special session on January 7th to hear oral arguments about two of President Biden's vaccine mandates.
They weren't supposed to start hearing cases until January 10th. They'll be hearing challenges from Republican-led states and conservative groups opposing vaccine mandates for larger businesses and for healthcare workers. The White House sent out a statement late Wednesday night defending its policies, saying it's critical to protect workers with vaccination requirements and testing protocols that are urgently needed. In Washington, Jill Nato, Fox News.
On the state level, California Governor Gavin Newsom says the state's roughly 2.5 million healthcare workers have until February 1st to get a booster shot or risk losing their jobs. This as New York State breaks the daily record for new COVID cases.
Nearly 29,000 new positive cases statewide, breaking the record high for the fifth time in 7 days. That's more than double the number of cases from just a week ago. But don't expect to see New York City look like a ghost town again. Outgoing Mayor Bill de Blasio says no more shutdowns here because that would be economically devastating. The city ramping up COVID testing in response to the surge. In New York, Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
The FDA authorizes the first at-home pill to head off the worst effects of the virus for those already infected. However, early supplies of Pfizer's pill Paxlovid will be extremely limited. COVID cases also surging in China. Just ahead of the Beijing Winter Olympics, the government ordering the lockdown of about 13 million people in the northern city of Xi'an, triggering panic buying. America's listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Just ahead of Christmas, holiday travelers are out in full force.
Even as COVID-19 cases surge, the lines at airport security keep on growing. The TSA says at least 2 million travelers across the country have been screened each day. According to AAA, more than 109 million people are traveling from December 23rd through January 2nd. That's up more than 30% compared to holiday travel in 2020. The director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reminding everyone to celebrate the holiday safely.
Fox's Alexis McAdams. Jurors in the sex trafficking trial of British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell get to take a Christmas break.
The jury will resume its deliberations on Monday. During the discussion, the members asked once again for the testimony of two victims, only known by the pseudonyms Jane and Kate. In addition, they wanted to take a look at what Epstein's former housekeeper, Juan Alessi, said under oath. So far, the questions that have been asked by the jury have given no clear lean toward a decision of innocence or guilt. Convictions could mean 70 years in prison. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Jurors in two other high-profile cases resumed deliberations Thursday. In the manslaughter trial of former Minnesota cop Kim Potter and the fraud trial of Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes. And actress Sally Ann Howes, who starred in the 1968 musical film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, dies at 91.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, we love you.
The movie, also starring Dick Van Dyke, showcased Howes' beauty and singing voice. Howes started acting in the movies in 1943 at age 12 and went on to star in films, TV, and stage productions. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Another tremendous halftime show here on Tall Tales, leading us into the second half of Tall Tales and the last half of Tall Tales before our 72-hour pass. And right now I've got Tom Poole on the line, who knows a lot about animals, animal fighting, cockfighting, etc. So tell us a lot of stuff here, Tom, things that we don't know.
Well, I'll try, Judge. Thank you. First, I want to say I really found that call from Mr. Purcell, educational and fascinating. And I would like to underscore what he said and what you've said, that I think the risks are now to the cockfighters very, very much greater, because I have friends of friends who have allayed my frustrations about why there were no prosecutions or anything on this, that they were awaiting the end of these court challenges because they felt like any prosecution would just get hung up, on waiting until these challenges were heard. But that's all over now. There are no more legal challenges. The Ninth Circuit is the last of it. Certainly the Supreme Court's not going to hear anything like this. And so it's over now. And so if you don't believe me, I'd love to bet you lunch that we have a federal arrest for cockfighting before the end of March, and probably sooner than that. I'm reasonably certain that's going to happen. And I worry because I have a very close friend who is involved in cockfighting, and I've talked to him about this, that you just don't understand the risks, what you're up against. I know something about this because on several occasions, people that we have charged with felony animal abuse have come back to me crying like school children. Can we not, throw this thing out and start over? Because, when you get a felony charge, as you know, you're going to be talking to a criminal attorney. That's the only kind of attorney you're going to be talking to, is a criminal attorney. And the stories that have come back to me, the prices have ranged. The cheapest any of those guys told me was $30,000. And the criminal attorney told them, give me $30,000 and I'll tell you when I need more. And if you don't have $30,000, get out of my office. And so you're going to be out that $30,000. If nothing else ever happens to you, you're out $30,000. But probably a lot more is going to happen to you. And so I just don't think people understand the fire they're playing with here. And I truly believe it's coming. Now that this Ninth Circuit case is finished, then I absolutely believe it's coming.
Yeah, and there will be some people that ought to be very embarrassed. The Jose Terlahis and the other folks that want to minimize the risk of what's going on, play the culture card, and in a sense, encourage people to engage in something that might cause them a great deal of grief.
I absolutely agree. I think if anyone has attended these things, if they've seen what happens to these birds, I don't think anyone can say, "Oh, I'm okay with that." I think very few people would be able to stomach it and say, "Yeah, I get it. That's fine." I don't think most people would find it fine. And so I hope that my friends, I hope that the people will walk away from this thing before they get stung, really, really badly. One other thing, if I could mention too, you talked about it yesterday, and that was about the suppression thing. And you mentioned something in passing, and that had to do with about the decibels, what it really means. And you were right in that it's a scale. It's not an arithmetic scale, in that each 10 decibels is 10 times more. So, for example, if the sound level is 50 decibels, at 60 decibels, it's 10 times higher. At 70 decibels, it's 100 times higher than it was at 50. And so I started looking at suppressors on the market to see how much they could suppress. The quietest suppressor that I could find, and I have pretty good sources. I mean, I'm a life member of the NRA, and the most quiet one I could find took down to 120 decibels. Now, in terms of comparison, a motorcycle built prior to 1970, the maximum sound that it can have at max RPM is 92 decibels. So let's just call that 90 decibels. More modern motorcycles have to be more quiet than that. But imagine a motorcycle at full RPM, any motorcycle. All right, at 100 decibels, it's going to be 10 times louder than that. And 110 decibels would be 100 times louder than that motorcycle. And at 120, it's 1,000 times louder than that motorcycle at max RPM. So that's the quietest that any of the suppressors guarantee that they can take that to. So this business of not being able to hear the gunshot, people won't know to duck when they hear that thing. It's just inaccurate. All these things can really hope to do is to avoid sound damage, and I agree with the governor. When you go to the range, you're all set up and ready and that sort of thing. Well, then, yeah, you can wear very good hearing protection, and there's no excuse to have hearing damage. But if you have to fire a weapon in home defense or some other time like that, then you're not going to have earmuffs on and that sort of thing. And you're very likely to experience lifetime hearing damage, which I have experienced, not from gunfire or anything like that. But I can tell you that tinnitus is no bargain. And there's just, in my opinion, it's just sad that this pure ignorance cost us this bill that could have actually helped people.
Well, and I ascribe a different motive to it, Tom, and that is that, there are dog whistles, abortion.
I heard you earlier.
Gun rights, yeah. So anybody who mentions the word gun, and the Democrats crawl out of their holes.
Anyway, thank you for indulging.
Doug, this is Jose, and I just want to get back to circle back to the animal cruelty part of what we were discussing on cockfighting. It was about a year ago, right, that the Pause Act was passed into law.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I remember there was talk of including cockfighting into the bill, but it was not included. And at the same time, I believe Senator Pedro Terlahi wanted to pass a celebration of cockfighting bill or something like that, resolution. Do you know anything about that and why cockfighting wasn't included in the bill?
I do know that it wasn't, And I had nothing to do with that. I was not part of that bill. I had nothing to do with that at all. I did talk to some of the people that were behind it, and I basically said, how could you? And they just kind of shrugged and said, well, it's like making sausage, it's better if you don't watch it being done. And that sort of thing. They just felt like in order to get what they wanted, they had to, close their eyes and play like the cockfighting thing didn't count. And so, no, I don't think there's anything but shameful reasons for why that was not included. I had not heard about the celebrating thing. I hadn't heard about that one.
Actually, it was included, and Wayne explained that. It was included because the PAWS Act has an express provision that says that cockfighting is not illegal.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
This is why I think that bill, the PAWS Act, was more of a reactionary thing, because I remember we were discussing about that dog who was shot on camera with the pellet gun.
Yeah.
And we did talk to you about that, because I think you did tend to this dog, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So
Yes,
I think that bill, PAWS Act, was more reactionary than it was really a deep-seated conviction
Well,
of animal cruelty.
another dog was maimed, a dog named Pugwa.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
right.
that's
That
where it all
And
started.
I did the post on that dog also. And I really said, look, there's nothing wrong with our laws. Our laws are strong enough. We didn't, in my opinion, the PAWS Act served really no benefit at all, because that is not the problem. There's no problem with our laws. The problem is with our judges, who just this particular judge said that we hadn't established that Pugwa had suffered, even though you can see the drag marks. We dragged him around there in the patio until he died and had 2 horrific wounds from 2 different weapons. So he was shot, and then he went and got another weapon, shot him again. And so to imply that dog didn't suffer was just such an outrage. And that's something that I'm never going to get over.
I read the decision, and what the decision said was that the bullet instantly killed the dog. Well, that's the facts. Okay.
Not the facts. I mean, the drag marks.
Tom, hold on. Tom, hold on a second. That was the fact that the judge was relying on in his decision, and held that the law would require something other than instant death to show that there was suffering. So if the dog was dragged around and these other things happened, then the explanation would be bad lawyering on the part of the prosecution, or a judge that was so intent on reaching a result that he ignored the facts. But there's a certain logic in the argument that if an animal is killed instantly, there's no suffering, and that's how that decision turned.
Well, of course, they went back and took the case back to the judge again and tried to make him understand that clearly the dog didn't die instantly, and the judge would not be moved. So I think your second explanation for the judge's motivations are more appropriate.
Yeah, well, okay, because I did cover the decision on Tall Tales, and my recollection was that I said, well, yeah, that's logical. That's probably correct. We could change the law to hold that suffering isn't the touchstone; it's the injuring of the dog. And certainly, killing the dog is injuring the dog. But here we are, still talking about cockfighting.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Judge. I'm very grateful.
Okay, it's always a pleasure talking to you, Tom.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Tom Poole, the territorial veterinarian. I remember that Pugwa case.
That was up in Jico, yes?
Yeah. And that's the way I recall it. Judge Berdalio said, well, he was shot in the head, died instantly. The statute says suffer, no suffering, et cetera. Now, if the facts were actually different from that, one wouldn't be able to pick that up from the decision. Okay, talking about decisions, then back to the Ninth Circuit. And Tom said that one of the reasons perhaps that the feds haven't been chasing down cockfighters is because of the pendency of this case and the Puerto Rico case in the courts. It's over. So starting on the second page, summary judgment was proper in rejecting Lynn Songen's claim that Section 12616 of the Animal Welfare Act exceeded the constitutional powers of Congress. It has long been settled that the territorial clause grants Congress, quote, plenary authority over the territories, including Guam. This is something, of course, that the separatists bitch about all the time. And this case cites Guam versus Guerrero. That was the Rastaman case, if you remember that. Yeah, Guerrero said that he was a Rastafarian and that marijuana was part of his religion and that he couldn't be, it was a First Amendment case, yeah. And then there's another case, Saipan Stevedore versus Director of Workers' Comp Programs. And going on in legislating for Guam, Congress has full and complete legislative authority and may do for the territories what the people may do for the states. We know that. That's Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. Congress needs only a rational basis for its acts exercising such power. And I've talked about strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and rational basis quite often. So it's the rational basis test, not the higher levels of scrutiny. Congress needs only rational basis for its acts. And I've explained the way that works. If a lawyer arguing a case before the judge that a statute is constitutional could come up with a hypothetical rational basis for the statute, even if no lawmaker thought of that, or if that's not the use that the statute is being used for, it passes the rational basis test. So it's a really low bar. Here, Congress had a rational basis to extend the existing prohibitions on animal fighting to Guam. The AWA's statement, that's Wayne Purcell, of policy shows that Congress based the regulations in the need to ensure humane care and treatment for animals, citing to 7 United States Code Section 2131. Summary judgment was proper in rejecting Linsongen's due process claims. To succeed on his substantive due process claim, Linsongen must show that cockfighting is one of the fundamental rights and liberty interests deserving of heightened protection. Substantive due process. We talk about due process, and what we're usually referring to is procedural due process: notice, opportunity to be heard, to summon witnesses, etc. Procedural due process. But substantive due process means a law that is so far afield from what is needed for the kind of society we want to live in that it is unconstitutional. You go back, constitutional scholars would tell you about the Lochner era. In the Lochner area, Lochner versus New York State, a New York law that set a limit on the number of hours a female could work in a bakery was unconstitutional because it infringed on the liberty of contract, substantive due process. But in order to find that, and if you have substantive due process, then you're entitled to heightened protection. That's strict scrutiny. To warrant such protection, a right or liberty must be objectively deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition, and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. Linsongen's evidence of cockfighting as a cultural practice, both predating and outside of American history, does not show that cockfighting is objectively deep-rooted in our nation's tradition. Various U.S. jurisdictions have restricted or prohibited animal fighting, including cockfighting, for centuries. But it's part of our culture. The Ninth Circuit has rejected substantive due process claims with stronger foundation than cockfighting, So Linsongen's claim fails a fortiori. The larger includes there you go. The larger includes the smaller. Law and order. There's a case called Raich versus Gonzalez deciding that despite varying degrees of marijuana legalization across the country, there is no corresponding substantive due process right. Linsongen also claims that Section 12616 violated his procedural due process rights on the grounds that Romanians lack representation in the federal government. I wonder, Sedfrey should spend more time listening to tall tales, I think. He needs a little more legal education before he goes marching into court again. Okay, it's not a requirement of due process that everyone should have a direct voice in the legislative process, citing a case called Bimetallic versus State Board of Equalization, a U.S. Supreme Court case, 1915. Summary judgment was proper in rejecting Linsongen's First Amendment claim. Linsongen must show that cockfighting is inherently expressive, such that an observer could understand the message communicated by his conduct. That gets you into things like burning the flag, expressive, decorating cakes, that sort of thing. Although Linsongen alleges that he expresses his character and family history when he fights roosters, no facts in the record support the conclusion that an observer would understand his conduct to communicate such a message. Nice try, Sedfrey. Summary judgment was proper in rejecting Linsongen's Ninth Amendment claim. The claim fails because the Ninth Circuit does not interpret the Ninth Amendment, which reads to secure, as you were, the Ninth Circuit said to secure any constitutional rights for purposes of making out a constitutional violation, and it cites to a couple cases. Summary judgment was proper in rejecting Linsongen's claim arising under the Bill of Rights section of the Organic Act of Guam. Guam enjoys only those rights conferred by Congress, and its Bill of Rights is a federal statute which does not confer rights beyond those of the federal Constitution, citing back to the Rastaman case. Accordingly, Linsongen's claim under the Organic Act, Linsongen's claim that his kitchen sink was severely damaged by the cockfight ban also is subject to summary judgment. In other words, he threw in everything here but the kitchen sink, but none of it worked. Accordingly, Linsongen's claim under the Organic Act cannot succeed where his analogous claims under federal Constitution fail. So it's a very workmanlike decision on a not so workmanlike case brought by a litigant pro se. And I have the letter here from Wayne Bassell to the governor, and he says that he obtained a packet schedule of cockfights planned at the Dadido Game Club in January, with the battles opening on New Year's Day, etc. This competition is scheduled to take place 2 years after the effective date of the law forbidding cockfighting in the United States, a law determined by a series of federal judges to be legally proper exercise of U.S. authority. As Guam's chief executive, you must be disturbed as we are about this conspiracy to violate the law. This illegal animal fighting endeavor draws together individuals as the Omicron virus surges. It enables more gambling, and it's knowingly conducted in contravention of U.S. law. Protesters may show up and confrontations may occur. I think that's pretty doubtful. We ask you to speak out publicly against this criminal conspiracy, call on the organizers to scuttle the plans, and announce that law enforcement personnel will be present to maintain the peace and discourage any illegal acts of animal cruelty. And Wayne goes on to make his case in a letter winding up by saying, citizens have every right to criticize federal policy actions, but they cannot opt out of federal laws on their whims. That's especially true for political leaders who swear an oath to the Constitution. We hope that you will send a clear message to cockfighters on Guam that you will not allow any gathering for illegal acts of animal cruelty. So it is a federal law, but Wayne makes a good point. The governor is the governor. She has her bully pulpit, and a responsible governor would use that bully pulpit to discourage this kind of activity. However, as one of the posters here on Facebook said, let me see if I can find that. Yeah, we have a governor who advocates the intentional termination of human life in the womb. Why would she care about a chicken? Good point, Jose. Yeah.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
You know, I found it interesting that the reason why she wouldn't say anything, was because it wouldn't matter anyways, right? That's what Crystal Paco St. Augustine said, right?
Uh-huh.
It wouldn't matter if she said anything, so she's not going to say anything.
Yeah, it would be futile.
It would be futile.
Yeah.
Just saying that statement alone really mattered to us that apparently talking about the law or holding up a federal law doesn't matter to her if she says anything or not.
No. So on the one hand, it is the law. I did take an oath to support the Constitution and laws of the United States. But, little me, if I were to say something, who would pay attention to me? And she got a good point there.
It's weak.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, I'm going to give $10,000 to the next of kin of anyone who dies from the Wuhan virus, because after all, it's the least I could do. All right, it's a sad performance, and once again, I don't like the idea that the national government is passing, is enacting laws that really fall within the realm of the states. It should be up to each of the 50 states how they want to handle animal cruelty. As far as Guam is concerned, I would hope that an enlightened Congress would treat us in the same manner that it would treat a state, even though they don't have to. All right, let's head for Wrigley in the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, next item I'm going to talk about here is Therese Terlahi versus the military. And I stumbled across an article in an online, well, it's actually a hard copy magazine called The Nation. It's been around forever. If you want to know what the left is up to, pick up The Nation. And the story here is the U.S. military is bulldozing sacred indigenous sites on Guam. And it's Therese Terlahi versus the military. Therese scored. She got some national earned media here. But as a predicate to go into the article from The Nation, and I'm not going to be able to do it all today, I'm going to have to do it in segments. I remind you that yesterday I had Bavacqua versus the USMC on the card, dealing with an article in the Daily News entitled "Descendants of Former Marine Corps Base Landowners Sought." And this article talks about remains of deceased people found out in an area in Camp Blas that is referred to as Magua, and some facts about that. And the most important fact is that the government is going to pay a lot of attention to that, so you'd expect that the governor would say, I have directed the SHPO to take extreme measures to deal with the area called Magua. No, the Guam Museum is in charge of this endeavor, meaning Michael Bavacqua. He gets right in and, you know, there ought to be a verb, Bavacqua, you know, to Bavacqua, which means to spew out anti-American rhetoric in favor of separatism. And Bavacqua's in this article pretty well. These remains with unknown ethnicity and time period will be continued to be treated with dignity and respect and will be reinterred at the SHPO designated crypt. That's what Koenig said, Lieutenant Commander Koenig. But Bavacqua and Lotz take a different track. So on day one, we find out that Michael Bavacqua is going to be in charge, basically, of the rabble rousing dealing with ancestral remains in Camp Blas. And then the next day, The Nation runs a story. The military is bulldozing sacred indigenous sites on Guam. Indigenous residents are fighting to save their island's heritage, while the military refuses to release key information about what it is razzing. Before the colonial era, Saban and Fadang on the United States island territory of Guam was indigenous burial grounds. Now it's mostly a field of flattened dirt and rock. The military has bulldozed the site in preparation for the construction of a Marine Corps base, part of a buildup of troops and facilities on Guam, a U.S. military outpost in the Western Pacific. And here's a quote from Therese Terlahi. It's down to the gravel. That's all you can see. And there are mounds of soil and grass, grave pits the military spared from excavation. In the entire cleared area, just little patches of grass. Getting only mostly flattened, Saban and Fadang has fared far better than other cultural sites of Guam's indigenous people, the Chamorros. In other areas, the military has found Chamorro bones and bone fragments, as well as ancient tools, ruins, and other artifacts, which it has begun to remove from their original locations and stow away. And it has done much of it effectively without Chamorro consent.
He doesn't define what Chamorro consent is.
No, this is Chris Gallardi. Yeah, he doesn't define that. However, we know that he's wrong because we've got this whole programmatic agreement mechanism, the SHPO working with military authorities, etc. Now, if he means Chamorro consent, if he's talking about a town meeting of 30 or 40,000 people who vote, no. historic, and then he goes on to say, military officials are required to consult Guam authorities when they come across cultural sites. But documents that I and local media have obtained via public records requests illustrate how the military directs historic preservation and strong arms Guam officials if they express concern over the methodology and lack of care.
And then doesn't provide said documents.
The military also tightly controls the release of information about the human remains and artifacts it uncovers. Military officials ravaged one historical site without telling locals, and you remember this one, Jose, and have refused to release comprehensive maps of archaeological finds. Many Guam residents think, and documents I obtained suggest, that such maps would reveal networks of ancient villages and burial sites which could hinder the military buildup. The hasty excavation and lack of local input has stirred up the indignation of Guam residents and Chamorro groups who are confronting the military to save the island's heritage. Therese Terlahi. Good going, Therese. The hasty excavation and local input, these are sacred sites, said Terlahi, but because the military needs to use them, we're not recognizing them as sacred. And we know what the definition of a sacred site is. We talked about that yesterday. It's any place that the military wants to build something. And you complimented your long ago ancestors in being so perceptive that they located their villages on areas that the military would want hundreds of years later. The military is planning to relocate about 5,000 Marines to Guam from its bases in heavily militarized Japanese prefecture of Okinawa. To support the Marines and beef up Guam's military capabilities, the Pentagon is constructing a Marine Corps base, a live fire training range complex, an urban combat training facility, a hand grenade range, a new aircraft carrier berthing station, an Army missile defense, and other facilities. The military took much of the space being used for these facilities, and here we go. The military took much of the space being used for these facilities from Chamorro families in a land grab during and after World War II, and under much of the construction sites lie the relics of Chamorro life before Guam was colonized by Spain in the 17th century. Colonization, particularly early decades of U.S. occupation, saw the deliberate near erasure of indigenous language and customs on Guam, which is partly why so many Guam Chamorros today feel a deep attachment to buried remains and artifacts and are willing to fight to preserve them. When the military comes across archaeological discoveries during construction, it is required to inform Guam authorities, particularly the State Historic Preservation Officer, also known as the SHPO, and consult them on the best way. Consult them. You can tell where these guys are coming from. On the best ways to mitigate harm to Chamorro heritage. However, the local authorities have limited power to protect the sites, and the military has final say over what to do with them. Many activists on Guam have accused local officials of playing along with the military's desire to quickly razz the ground on top of ancient remains. But the military browbeats officials if they raise concern about the preservation of cultural sites. The military browbeats officials. As illustrated in an August memo to the State Historical Preservation Officer I obtained via local public records request. The memo is in response to concerns that the Preservation Officer Patrick Lujan raised about an archaeological monitoring and discovery plan for a construction site on Guam's Anderson Air Force Base, Guam's Air Force Base. Lujan said that the plan was vague, that it gave all decision-making power to the military, and that it could impede data collecting efforts he was required to undertake under local law. An Air Force official rebuked Lujan's concerns as unfounded and out of line, writing that there are requirements that the military receive concurrence or approval on archaeological monitoring plans. We kindly remind you, the official wrote, that the state historic preservation officer may not impose local statutes on federal agencies. The role of the SHPO is to advise, assist, and consult with the federal agency. Now we get down to the part that we covered here on Tall Tales. The military also encourages Guam authorities to withhold information about discoveries from the public. In May, reporter Anamita Carr, we remember her, obtained emails from the Pacific Daily News via records request that showed military officials urged an interim state historic preservation officer to forward media requests for information to them. This is Carlotta Leon Guerrero, claiming that the preservation officer wasn't permitted to share additional information about archaeological discoveries. At the time, the newspaper had reported that the military had discovered additional burial sites at Sabanan Fadang, but officials hadn't released any reports. So I'm going to stop there. But you remember this. And I think I even sent off a sunshine request, and Carlotta denied it, citing a federal statute. And I followed up and said, since when are you enforcing federal law? So it turned out it wasn't the military that was doing the denying, it was Carlotta Leon Guerrero.
As the military said, talk to her.
Yeah, and the military, the referral, when the request went to the military, they said, talk to Carlotta. Carlotta said, I can't do this. Carlotta pulled a Rory. It's prohibited by the law. So nice going, Therese. So you were able to, these things don't happen by accident. Chris Gallardi wasn't sitting at his desk one day saying, I think I'll write a 13-page. Let me see here how many pages it is.
It's pretty long.
Yeah. Yeah, 13-page. I think I'll write a 13-page story about the military on Guam and the Chamorro culture.
Complete with Freedom of Information Act requests.
Yeah.
This is premeditated.
Oh, no. He just came up with his idea all by himself. And then once he did that, he went online and he looked at different places. Well, Therese Trelawney is the Speaker of the Guam Legislature. I think I'll contact her. Maybe she'll have some good information for me. Wrong. Obviously, Therese put together the whole package here and choreographed it in such a manner that this guy would reach these conclusions, especially about the Carlotta affair, which is just dead wrong and very, very misleading. So congratulations, Therese. You got Guam some publicity. Now, I hope this helps you. I hadn't picked you as a separatist, but I guess I was wrong.
Well, here's another piece of evidence. Chamorro is spelled capital C, capital H, Amorus. Who else but anyone on Guam knows that?
Exactly.
Because they don't do that in Saipan.
No.
They don't do that in Rota.
No, they don't do it in Webster's.
Webster's.
Yeah.
Or in the nation.
Yeah. Yeah, so good going. Let's give Therese a big hand. Therese, you worked the system. You got a lot of earned media there. You moved the cause of separatism forward. Maybe one iota forward, but you did your part. Congratulations. Okay, last item on the card today is, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, home stretch here on Tall Tales. We're at Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. I got just a couple more furlongs and I'll be finished. And I start my 72-hour pass. Jose and I are going to have 3 days of no Tall Tales. The good news is that it is Christmas and we're going to enjoy Christmas. I want to take this opportunity to extend the regular season's greetings. Not get caught up at the end of the show and not being able to do a workmanlike job of it. So let's see. We're getting very close to Christmas, so I'm supposed to say Christmas, bah. No, wait a minute. That's Ebenezer Scrooge. Christmas, bah, humbug. No, I'm not going to do that one. Let's try this one. Feliz Pascua, Año Nuevo. Merry Christmas, one and all, tailgaters. It's been a great year dealing with, talking to all of you guys, reading your Facebook posts, and hope you have the very best Christmas. I'm sure Jose wants to extend his Christmas greetings too.
And I do.
Go ahead, Jose.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Brief and to the point.
To the point.
Yeah, okay. Last item here on the card, the narrative versus the kids. Michigan School District under fire for equity challenge that includes Black Lives Matter protests. The Farmington Public School District in Michigan is under fire this week for a direct call for students to join a Black Lives Matter political protest and declaring that calling America the land of opportunity is a microaggression. This is what kids are learning in school. The controversial statements were made as part of the school's 21-day equity challenge. Remember what I said about equity a little earlier?
Run away.
Yeah, I would rather be in a theater when somebody hollered fire than when somebody hollered equity. The district declared that we, together with you, hope to deepen our understanding about the members of our community and to use this knowledge to confront bigotry, hatred, and discrimination against any individual or group. There's nothing wrong with that statement or the purposes of such a challenge. However, there is a personal action plan sheet for students to track their progress in becoming anti-racist. Directives include, quote, join a Black Lives Matter or affiliated protest, and donate to bail efforts supporting people arrested for protesting against injustice. Bail people out of jail, go to Black Lives Matter protests. That's what you want your kids to do. While the movement to address racism and affirming that Black Lives Matter has wide support, Black Lives Matter as an organization remains highly controversial, from involvement in past violent protests to anti-police rhetoric to calling for people not to buy products from white-owned businesses, not to mention that it was started by trained Marxists. And that's probably the attraction for these folks in Michigan. Reasonable people can disagree on those objections, But the point is, Black Lives Matter is an organization that comes with pronounced political viewpoints. The direct solicitation for parents and students and to join Black Lives Matter runs counter to the political neutrality expected from a public school system. On the microaggression controversy, we have previously discussed such lists on the college level that specify issues ranging from seating choices to eye contact. Terms are flagged from melting pot. We used to say the United States is a melting pot. People came from all over the world, and they no matter where they came from, they became Americans. That's a microaggression. Such terms like post-racial and personal responsibility have been added to the lists. Even the word triggering has been declared triggering. If you use the word triggering, you're triggering someone. The district warned that saying that America is the land of opportunity is another microaggression to be avoided. Why? This country is a record number of people crossing our borders because of the opportunities that it affords them. That does not mean that we have to do not have serious problems to address on social or racial equity. You can be supportive of such movements while recognizing that this country also remains a great magnet for those seeking greater opportunities. The question is how the district chooses between political causes. We discussed previously how New York gave students the day off to join climate change protests. I happen to support combating climate change and have always favored robust environmental protections. However, would students be given the same support for joining protests in support of other causes like pro-police or pro-life demonstration? No way. The problem is that these debates are often driven by the extremes. There are many parents who support students discussing racial equity, but also do not support school districts engaging in direct political posturing. That's my friend Jonathan Turley. And once again, it's a classic example here of what we've got. We've got the narrative and the truth. And the truth is that Black Lives Matter doesn't have anything that is going to help any school student. Okay, so let's see. I've got just a few more minutes to go here. I've got one of my regular callers on the line, none other than Another Joe. And Another Joe wants to express a Christmas greeting. Go ahead, Another Joe.
Okay, Uncle Bob, I just want to say thank you for letting me say Merry Christmas to you, because it's something I dare not say in front of liberals.
You can't say it in front of locals?
I can't say it in front of liberals.
Oh, in front of liberals. Oh, yeah. You have to go to something like season's greetings or
Happy Holiday.
Happy Holidays or... and if I catch anybody with that happy holidays around me, I'll wash their mouth out with soap.
It's funny you should say that, because when I was a kid back in the 70s in school, I actually witnessed a teacher doing that to a kid. I think it was the last time it was done.
Yeah.
Anyway, Merry Christmas to you and producer Jose, and Happy New Year. Well, I will hear from you before New Year, but Merry Christmas anyway.
Okay.
And I wanted to say, Uncle Bob, that this is an issue of parental rights, and then we're starting to see, what kids are being taught in school. Parents are starting to hopefully wake up more, and they're opposing. Was it the I forget what it was. He said there's like boards of education or something. Some school, public school education organizations are
Gotta go, Another Joe. You hear the music?
Thanks for your time, Uncle Bob. Appreciate it.
Merry Christmas. That's it. Let's go, Brandon, and we'll see you on Monday.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Mandates headed to the Supreme Court. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Justices agreed to a special session in 2 weeks to hear arguments over President Biden's vaccine mandates for large companies and many healthcare workers. This as the White House says the Omicron variant will cause COVID cases to rise significantly.
Fully vaccinated people, particularly those with a boost, are highly protected. But due to Omicron's highly transmissible nature, we will see fully vaccinated people get COVID. They'll likely be asymptomatic or feel under the weather for a few days.
New York State reporting a daily record for new COVID cases, and in neighboring New Jersey, they're seeing the highest count since last winter's peak. Fox 5 New York's Briella Tomasetta with more from New Jersey.
Governor Murphy says hospitalizations are also climbing.
6,840 positive cases today, with the heaviest of hearts, 34 deaths confirmed.
And as the Omicron variant rages, local municipalities are taking added precautions. Newark Mayor Ross Baraka signs an executive order requiring that masks be worn indoors in all public settings.
And President Biden tells ABC News he plans to run for a second term in 2024.
Biden also admitted that a lot could happen between now and then.
I'm a great respecter of fate. Fate has intervened in my life many, many times. If I'm in the health I'm in now, if I'm in good health, then, in fact, I would run again.
Biden, were he to run and even win in 2024, would be 86 before the end of his second term.
Fox's Kevin Cork. And stocks in Asia and Europe followed Wall Street higher. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are the most important issues facing Americans today? Every Monday, join me, Brett Baer, chief political anchor and executive editor of Special Report, and my rotating all-star panel of experts as we discuss the policies, practices, and solutions to the biggest and most important issues of the day. You can hear new episodes every Monday. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
The Fox News Rundown is a weekday morning podcast that dives deep into the major and controversial stories of the day. Hosted by the anchors of Fox News Radio. Subscribe now to hear a perspective of news you won't find anywhere else. Listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Russia agrees to negotiate with the U.S. over security concerns as Russian troops surround Ukraine's borders. Fox's Greg Palcott has more from London.
The Kremlin committing to talks with Washington and the West as early as next month. A military response has been threatened by Russian President Vladimir Putin if his demands are not met. The demands include Ukraine not joining NATO and the U.S. and NATO pulling back troops, offensive weaponry, and military gear from Ukraine and other Eastern European countries. Russia has been massing some 100,000 troops near Ukraine, prompting fears of a full-scale invasion. President Biden says any Russian invasion would trigger severe consequences, short of a military response. While the U.S. is willing to talk with Russia, it's saying red line items like that ban on Ukraine